Hello, and welcome to Chips Out Loud, a podcast series brought to you by Micron Technology. I'm your host, Jim Green. In each episode, we'll discuss emerging technologies in the memory and storage space. We'll also focus on the customer needs that shape evolving modern client devices, as well as next-generation data centers. I'm very pleased to be joined today by two special guests. We have Ryan Baxter, Senior Director of Marketing in our Data Center segment, and we have Eric Caward, Senior Manager of Product Marketing in our Emerging Technologies. Our topic today is CXL and its impact in next-generation data centers. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you very much.
To kick things off, we should probably start at the beginning. What is CXL and why is CXL needed?
Wow. What is CXL? In short, it's Compute Express Link. This is a brand new interface we're pretty excited about. It's really the first interface of its kind in servers, really for a variety of reasons. Number one, it's got a lot of industry backing. This time around, we've got, over 110 CXL adopters. So this is not something that's going to be extremely proprietary, very niche-y. We've got a lot of industry backing this. Number two, it's really an interface built for efficient memory accesses. The protocol itself is byte addressable. It's low latency. It's high bandwidth. And for all those nerds out there, it's cache-coherent. So lots of really interesting aspects that servers really like. Contrast this to several interfaces that, have been discussed over time. They've either fallen short technologically or, found their way into interesting niches, but never really in the mainstream like we believe CXL will be.
Yeah, so if you think about the broad industry support, it's really going to drive inertia that builds innovation and will accelerate in the data center, which will be very exciting.
And this is not just for folks that want to innovate on the interface. This would be, enterprise OEMs, this would be cloud service providers, and everyone in between. This is an interface that really welcomes innovation and a lot of very interesting aspects that you were really never able to do previously on standard servers. So we're pretty excited about it, Jim.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that contrast because I was going to ask, there have been lots of new buses and a lot of, new interfaces and things in the past and, life rolls on, right? So you've given us that perspective there, and it sounds like a pretty exciting developments happening. You mentioned something for everyone. So what are the customer sets and the workloads that are going to be the first to need or expect to benefit the most from CXL in its initial stages here?
We really see the initial use case for CXL memory expansion is to add capacity, just raw capacity. Mm-hmm. For example, in-memory database data sets really are bounded by the size of the memory pool. And CXL memory expansion can greatly increase what problems can be addressed and solved efficiently. We also see bandwidth expansion as another place that can really drive adoption. That can be seen along the lines of data analytics. Agile businesses really require real-time analysis of their data. With very, very large data sets that really spill over, right, the memory pool and go into storage, they really are able to extract even more performance and get into that real-time analysis kind of sweet spot is if you're able to add more memory capacity via CXL memory expansion. The entire purpose of data analytics is really to transform data into actionable insight, and CXL memory expansion will accelerate this.
Yeah, CXL isn't just a phenomenon that's, this looks interesting. Let's see if it can add industry gravity. This really solves what we believe are fairly existential platform problems coming at us over the next couple of years. Eric mentioned bandwidth and capacity expansion, and that's really due to the result of, core count growth on the CPU side and the fact that the memory subsystem, whether that be from a capacity or from a bandwidth delivery perspective, just really isn't being able to keep up for a variety of reasons. Number one, you've got DRAM scaling challenges. Number two, you've got just the lack of ability really to cram as many memory channels as you possibly can into a server. It's really technically challenging. So there are, fairly sizable platform issues that are coming at us again over the next couple of years that are driving this as well. I'll add that really CXL provides also a potential, play for TCO benefits, things like being able to spread your memory footprint out across the system so that you're optimizing that capacity across multiple interfaces. Again, that could benefit TCO in a pretty interesting way. So a number of very interesting use cases on the horizon. Again, we're pretty excited about it.
We've focused a lot so far on memory. But we've also talked about, dozens and dozens and hundreds of vendors being on the board. And there aren't that many memory vendors. So is CXL a memory story, or is it an accelerator story, or is it something altogether different?
We believe first and foremost, at least initially from a time perspective, it is a memory story. That's not to say that the CXL interface cannot also be used for attach points for acceleration, because it definitely can be. But memory is really where the near-term challenges lie, and customers are really looking at CXL to address those challenges. And I think once we get those under our belts and behind us, then I think the industry will shift, maybe add focus to more the acceleration aspect of what CXL can provide.
Yeah, I think one way to think about that, Jim, is, how will the CXL market really play out? How is it going to mature, right? When does it actually become mainstream? Well, with any new technology, adoption does take time, right? We kind of see CXL memory market coming into being, if you will, in three general phases. There will be exceptions. Anytime you apply broad brushstrokes, there will be exceptions. But in general, we see that enablement will come into play first and foremost. That's where they were just trying to enable the software ecosystem, the operating system, the hypervisors, applications, where customers will go ahead and get the platforms and the hardware, the CXL memory expansion solutions, and they'll actually, kind of kick the tires, if you will, right? Mm-hmm. Work on that software enablement. However, once we get to probably sometime around CXL 2.0, platforms that support that, solutions that support that, we really see that's the second stage, and that really will be the beginning of broad market adoption. And that's where things start to get really interesting from a volume standpoint. And then lastly, kind of what you touched on is that acceleration piece, is that third phase is innovation, right? That's when you kind of already have your platforms and your base hardware. You've had some optimization with your operating system, hypervisors, and application-specific aware programs. And you really are able to go deeper and chase value that otherwise you wouldn't be able to do without CXL Compute Express Link.
Great summary, Eric. Thanks. So I've heard some Micron leaders talk about data centers evolving to become memory centers. What does this mean to you? And is CXL part of that evolution? As old timers like me in the industry, memory bottlenecks were very rarely the case here, but now you've already thrown out a number of examples. Is indeed this memory center phenomenon a real thing?
Yeah, you don't have to look much further than just following where the money is being spent. These days, some of the state-of-the-art data centers operated by some of the world's largest, cloud service providers, up to about half of the total system bill of materials is memory and storage. And it really wasn't very long ago where that was a far lower number, perhaps 15 to 20%. And so that's really increased over time. And it speaks to, the importance of memory when it comes to supporting new applications and new capabilities that cloud service providers are standing up. Where CXL becomes very interesting is the potential. Now, there are significant challenges in this, but potential for looking at a disaggregated memory model. So moving from a situation where memory is only attached to, say, a single CPU or perhaps two CPUs, and there's local information exchange being done within a single server, to perhaps leveraging multiple servers that could leverage the same pool of memory through a fabric attached solution. So CXL certainly provides, some potentially interesting flexibility in the future. And that's why we believe the CXL is the interface where all of these memory attach points exist and becomes the sort of memory-centric data center of the future. I don't know, Caward, if you wanted to add anything there.
I guess I would comment that how in the data-driven economy, customers want to look for transforming that data into actionable insight. And that really requires data to be accessible, low latency, and that just really speaks to memory, right? That's not necessarily a storage play. That data has to be accessible. And we see the memory subsystem of the data center fragmenting, where innovations are coming in, whether it's AI, machine learning, GPU accelerators, really trying to target specific workloads and provide more value to our end customers. And that's requiring different requirements for memory. And we think that definitely CXL can be one of those solutions for many of those problems.
Excellent. And I'm glad you kind of hinted in this direction, Ryan. I wanted to make sure we give a view here. Yeah, in any given server, CXL makes a difference, and you can plug different components in and expand and contract. But at the data center level, the bigger picture, what does this mean for someone who's planning out, building out that data center in 23 or 24? Does this give them some new things to consider?
Yeah, absolutely, Jim. With CXL, you're typically attaching devices behind what we call an abstracted interface. And what that means is no longer are you shackled by whatever requirements that need to be in place for that particular CPU generation. So for instance, is a DDR4 3200 or DDR5 4800, whatever media, whether that's DRAM or something else that you put behind that abstracted interface, it really doesn't care. The server really doesn't care, because at the front end, it's, compatible. And where the rubber meets the road is how that solution drives value in the particular use case. And so we're not, here to say that CXL is the solution for everything, but it certainly provides a whole lot of flexibility and more degrees of freedom for data center architects to solve new problems, and provides a very interesting potential TCO play that otherwise wouldn't exist.
We've talked about the memory storage hierarchy, and people have always said, well, do you need it to be that fine grained? Does CXL make it easier to get to that orchestrated near far memory storage subset? And is that how you can play back to the responsiveness and the TCO that you need for any given workload?
Yeah, certainly. Again, it's an interface that no longer requires a deterministic kind of DRAM model, if you will. Now, there are some things, as Eric correctly pointed out, that we'll have to do and have to work with ecosystem players, making sure the software is compatible with this essentially new level of media. But yeah, this certainly makes a server much more flexible to be able to pull levers, whether that be for higher bandwidth or lower latency, potentially media behind that abstracted interface. Whatever that use case really needs, it really does provide a flexible interface that just, again, otherwise wouldn't exist. It provides a level of non-determinism at the platform level.
Yeah, if I could add to that, not only is it non-deterministic, but really CXL was built around a memory interface, right? It's high bandwidth, low latency, byte addressable, cache-coherent interconnect, so that you can do things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do on a very excellent protocol of NVMe, right? That's storage-centric on block addresses, and you just don't need huge payloads when you're working on data, right? From out of memory into compute. So CXL is really optimized at enabling memory innovation.
Excellent. Ryan, Eric, thank you once again for joining us and for sharing your views on Compute Express Link technology and its impact in the next generation data centers. Thanks to our listeners. As always, you're welcome to check out new technologies at www.micron.com/solutions/server and learn more about Micron at www.micron.com/careers. And of course, I encourage you to engage with Micron technologies on both LinkedIn and in the Twitter sphere. Have a great day, and we look forward to talking to you in our next episode of Chips Out Loud.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it.
Thank you to our audience for joining. Please listen in again on the next episode of Chips Out Loud.